Hey guys, as we wind down tonight, we won't be floating into dreams of soft cakes, whispering love songs, or angels with well-brushed wings. Tonight, you're becoming a medieval assassin, or, more realistically, a background character who accidentally wandered into a secret guild and doesn't know how to leave politely. People often imagine assassins as graceful shadows gliding through the night, leaving behind nothing but a poetic trail of blood and existential monologues about justice. Well, no. The truth is, most assassins tripped over doormats, dropped their daggers in public markets, or got bitten by rats while hiding in barley sheds, waiting for the signal. What they really left behind were sweat stains, dirt smudges, and the soft sighs of unemployed mercenaries, who smelled faintly of goat. If you're imagining a shadowy cult, blood rituals and oaths made under moonlight, you're not wrong. That did happen, but most of the time, they were just sitting around, wiping blades, waiting for orders. Sometimes without blades, sometimes without orders, sometimes stabbing their own foot because they practiced in the dark and forgot to clean out the goat pen. Don't worry. You don't have to kill anyone tonight. Just lie still, breathe gently, and picture yourself as a failed assassin, living under a bridge, talking to catfish, and reminiscing about that one botched mission in the winter of 1173. And if you're still awake, that's fine too. Real assassins never sleep soundly anyway. Now, soften the glow, set a gentle breeze in motion, and let's drift into tonight's tale together. Chapter 1. Assassin. Job interview. No CV, just a dagger. If you think becoming a medieval assassin involves a formal interview, with tablecloths and light wine, well, you're not entirely wrong. Sometimes there was light wine, mostly to get you just drunk enough before being persuaded, or threatened, into signing a blood oath you didn't fully understand. Truth is, no one wakes up on a sunny morning thinking, I think I'll become an assassin today. Just like no one eats thin gruel, and suddenly wants to plant turnips using only their teeth. Becoming an assassin happens to you, like strep throat, like acne, like loving the wrong person. Some were forced, some were chosen. A term that sounds impressive, but usually meant you were too lonely, too poor, or too easy to manipulate to say no. And some just happened to overhear the wrong conversation and suddenly found themselves blindfolded, dragged into a cellar, and politely asked whether they'd prefer to remain silent forever. The interview usually began with a question. Do you believe in fate? If you said yes, you were taken away. If you said no, you were also taken away. Just down a darker, damper hallway. There were no forms, no skill tests. No one cared whether you'd killed someone before. They simply watched how long you could stare at a stone wall without asking, "Are we done yet?" If you lasted 5 minutes or more, congratulations, you passed the first round. Next came the psychological assessment, which was essentially locking you in a room with a hungry snake to see how you'd react. If you screamed, you were normal and rejected. If you bit the snake, you were considered. If you asked the snake its name and offered to be friends, congratulations, you were command material. The survival rate after the first encounter was not great. Not because anyone wanted you dead, but because the stairs to the cellar were always slippery. The lighting was bad, and you had to duck at least 3 times to avoid smashing your head on low beams. Many future assassins didn't drop out because they were weak. They dropped out because they got dizzy and vomited from the ancient mold, mixed with rancid candle oil. If you managed to survive all that, you were treated to the grand initiation speech, long, repetitive, delivered by a masked figure, with a monotone voice, like someone reciting morning prayers to a colony of cockroaches. The speech covered the sacred rules: total loyalty, no questions, no romantic entanglements, and no carrying personal documents. Many walked out at no romantic entanglements, but if you stayed, You were welcomed with a handshake cold as spoiled fish, and handed a black uniform, either far too tight or absurdly oversized. Since none of them were labeled, you'd be asked your name. If you gave your real one, they'd laugh. If you gave a nickname, they'd nod. If you said, "I forgot," you'd be given 2 days of rest, and officially begin training under your new title, the one who forgets. At that point, you might start suspecting you'd joined something not entirely legal, but like accidentally swallowing a fruit pit. You now had 2 choices: let it pass naturally, or remove your stomach. Neither option was gentle. The interview ended in a small room with a straw mattress and a rat who knew how to open water jugs. You'd sleep there, or rather, you'd lie awake, thinking about your life. Quiet dinners, and that sweet pastry vendor you once loved, who might now be your first target. And just like that, no resume, no skills, no passion, you became part of the underworld. A world with no streetlights, no exit signs, and very few survivors to tell the tale. You don't know what lies ahead, but at least you know one thing. You'll never have to go through another job interview again, because this job has no career ladder, just plenty of ways to disappear. Chapter 2. Assassin School. Graduation is optional. Dying is not. You've survived the interview, a hazy blur of initiation ritual, communal chanting, too much darkness, too little oxygen, and a few rats that clearly majored in insomnia inducement. Now, you're officially a student at an unnamed, unmarked, and, most importantly, unscheduled organization. Welcome to the Medieval Assassin School, where every lesson comes with the risk of broken bones, missing ears, or a quiet, internal, existential collapse. Your first day begins with a physical test. Not a 5-lap jog, not 50 push-ups. No, they simply push you down a hill. If you roll to the bottom without blacking out, you're marked as potential. If you break something, you're reassigned to observation roles. The stealth class starts in a storage shed, filled with onions, the era's preferred biological weapon. You must sit still, not sneeze, not cry, and definitely not let rats climb onto your head. Your instructor will walk by. If you're convincing, they pretend not to see you. If you're not, they throw a potato at you. Next, wall climbing, in silence, as quiet as mist, graceful as a cat, in theory. In practice, the moss-covered stone walls are slicker than raw egg whites, and were specifically built to not be climbed. You quickly learn this most essential assassin skill: falling, without screaming. After bandaging your limbs, and briefly wondering why you didn't just become a baker, you move on to covert weaponry. Compact tools that are easy to conceal. Daggers, poison needles, or in desperate cases, a sharpened porridge spoon. One student once cracked an egg with a needle so thin, the victim thought they were having an allergic reaction. He was praised. 2 days later, he died. Accidentally stabbed himself while rolling over in bed. Poison class is thrilling. The instructor hands you leaves, powders, mushrooms, then watches to see who's still upright after 15 minutes. No notes allowed. They say, if you can't remember what kills people, you shouldn't be trying to kill them. Psychological profiling is also on the syllabus. You learn to look someone in the eye and judge whether they deserve to die. The correct answer is usually, no, but I'm being paid. The wrong answer is, I need more data. Those who say that are kindly escorted out. They never return, and are likely replaced by someone less empathetic. Soft skills training includes suppressing sneezes, not laughing at buzzing flies, and resisting seduction by donuts while stalking a target. One trainee missed a prime kill because he caught a whiff of honey cakes. He now tends the assassin horses. He is no longer trusted with anything sharper than a carrot. The most beloved class, meaning the least injurious, is disguise. You'll dress up as beggars, old women, wandering musicians, or, on one occasion, a large rock. A student once nailed the role of a saint statue in the marketplace for 3 full days. Sadly, on the 4th, a dog marked him as territory. Dignity is difficult in this profession. The food isn't terrible. If you can eat bran porridge mixed with dirt without vomiting, meals double as observation tests. who grabs with their left hand, who eats too fast, who skips the spoon. All are clues. To what? No one knows. But suspicion is the default curriculum. Sleep is never deep. Your roommate might be a classmate or a pop quiz. One night, you might wake to find someone standing at your bedside, masked, holding a candle, whispering, "Just a test." The problem is, sometimes it's not. Sometimes they're sleepwalking, and sometimes you're not even sure you're awake. After a few weeks, you'll learn the ultimate lesson. Becoming an assassin isn't about learning to kill. It's about not dying from your own incompetence. And if you do well, you'll be sent on an internship. No certificates, no graduation ceremony, just a mission, a dull blade, and a final instruction. Try not to draw attention. And so, after dubious training, scrapes, and restless nights in a hayloft, you're ready to leave school. No one sees you off. No one claps. Only the wind. A one-eared cat, watching you with contempt, and a soft sigh. Your own. Because you know, the simple days are over. The days when breakfast and avoiding rats were your main concerns. Now, you'll worry about bigger things. Like how to kill someone while keeping your shoes dry. A challenge no school truly prepares you for. Chapter 3. Elegant Weapons and the Rusty Disappointments. When people think of assassins, they picture gleaming weapons. Sharp, precise, elegant, like a clean goodbye. In metal form. Short swords forged with soul fire. Daggers hidden in sleeves. Poison needles lighter than feathers. Slicing through windpipes without spilling the tea. The reality? Not quite. If you had to describe a medieval assassin's weapons in one word, it would be improvised. Take daggers, the unofficial national weapon of assassins. Most were forged by the village blacksmith, who also made spoons, nails, and once tried to make a frying pan, but forgot to actually hit the metal. These daggers were rarely sharp. The handles wobbled, and the blades tended to bend, depending on the user's mood. One assassin once stabbed himself mid-assassination because the blade snapped in half, while he was trying to deal with an elderly man who was asleep. Swords were worse, too big for a profession built on subtlety. Some stubborn assassins insisted on carrying them, hiding them under cloaks, which made them look like they were smuggling a small cow. As they walked, their swords clinked like a failed orchestra. Result? Spotted from 3 streets away, 2 taverns, and 1 very public outhouse. Throwing knives sound convenient, until you remember. No one in medieval Europe trained like a ninja. Knives would wobble through the air like autumn leaves, not due to finesse, but because the handle was worm-eaten. Many victims simply turned, picked up the knife, and asked, "Is this yours?" Perhaps the most refined weapon was the garrote, described in old manuals as a symphony of silent death. But if you've ever tried to strangle someone with frayed burlap string, you'd know it's noisy, itchy, and more likely to entangle your own neck. One assassin famously passed out from pulling the wrong way. Poison was the introvert's choice, but medieval poison wasn't bottled conveniently. It was powder, mixed by hand, measured by guesswork. 1 pinch too little, and the victim just got a stomachache. Too much, and you poisoned yourself while sneezing. One notable assassination attempt ended with a poisoned pastry that caused 3 days of diarrhea, followed by miraculous recovery and improved digestion. Blunt weapons, maces, axes, anything that required upper body strength, were discouraged. Assassins weren't butchers. That said, one did use a pepper grinder once, simply because it felt right. He succeeded, but had to drag the weapon for miles while fleeing, leaving a trail longer than his tax records. The most tragic stories belong to the inventors. One assassin designed a poison needle launcher powered by crossbow strings. The idea was brilliant. The first test? The needle flew backward, into his arm. After that, the guild leaned towards simpler methods. like threats. Beyond primary weapons, assassins also carried an array of tactical accessories. For instance, itch powder, a mix of dried moss, house dust, and cat fur, intended to make targets scratch their necks, exposing arteries. The problem? Most assassins were allergic to their own weapon. Another staple, black ink, used for forged notes, fake signatures. Or, in emergencies, thrown into a pursuer's eyes. Usually, though, the ink had dried out, or the bottle shattered in a cloak pocket, leaving the assassin looking like a failed street mime. Weapon bags? Not standard issue. No custom holsters, no tactical backpacks. Most used old flour sacks, hand-stitched pouches, or hid blades in bread loaves. Some stuffed knives into their hats, giving the appearance of having been recently stung by a bee. One assassin hid a blade in his boot and lost a toe on a damp night. But the greatest fear wasn't being caught. It was forgetting your weapon. One assassin wrote in his forged diary, "I arrived for the hit carrying a fork. Didn't kill the landlord, but traumatized him into quitting the profession." The only weapon that consistently worked? Silence. Absolute. Breath-holding. Heart-slowing silence. Air so tense it could crack. Breaths soft as wind slipping through rotten shutters. Silence. The supreme weapon. Yet it could not be forged, bought, or packed. So, in the end, an assassin's true weapons weren't daggers, swords, or poisons. They were acceptance. Acceptance that you'll fail, that your weapon might only be sharp enough to scratch an itch. That survival after repeated failure doesn't make you a killer anymore. It makes you legend. The most missed assassin who ever lived. A legacy of rust, but unforgettable. And now, if you're feeling sleepy, rest easy. None of them ever stabbed you. They meant to. But the blade snapped, and they forgot the rope. Chapter 4. Disguises that fooled no one. When monk robes can't cover the smell of sweat. A good assassin doesn't just know how to kill. They must know how not to look like someone who would. It sounds easy enough, but in truth, it's harder than dodging taxes in a village, where the collector comes by 3 times a day. You might think of disguise as an art, the kind where you transform so completely your own mother wouldn't recognize you. Where you walk past a palace guard, and all he smells is soap, not the lingering intent to end his boss's life. But in reality, medieval disguises were more like trying to camouflage a pig using a tablecloth. You could cover it, but the sound remained, and the smell never left. Let's begin with the most common costume, the wandering monk. Brown robe, rough rope belt, wooden cross, carved from a broken table leg, and a gaze that suggested you had forsaken both the world and warm meals. The problem? Everyone chose to be a monk. Pass through any market, and you'd spot at least 7 holy men lurking in the crowd. One villager once said, "We have more monks than people with teeth." And assassins are not actors. They don't move gently, don't clasp their hands in prayer, and definitely don't speak in poetic riddles. The result? A monk standing in the town square, holding a dagger, scratching his head, muttering, "Who was I supposed to kill again?" One assassin disguised himself as a legless beggar, sitting on a broken wheel. But he forgot to wash his face, still wore a visible dagger pouch. Local children noticed, pelted him with carrots, and he had to flee, by standing up and running. The disguise ended with a scream. He grew his legs back. Others tried the merchant look, flashy brocade tunics, wide belts, empty coin purses. But assassins don't talk much. When a customer asked, "What are you selling?" the answer was, I'm watching you." The deal ended there. A seasoned assassin once posed as a midwife. Clever, right? Easy way into households. Except for one detail. He was a man. Upon entering, the husband asked, "Why does the midwife sound like her voice is cracking?" The story ended with a chase through a cornfield. Some got more creative. One crawled on all 4s, barking softly, wearing a dagger like a bell around his neck, posing as a hunting dog. It was original, But the real dog didn't appreciate it. After a short scuffle, the assassin lost part of his ear. 10 peasants, and 1 toothless grandma, were still laughing an hour later. Some assassins believed no disguise was best. Just blend into the crowd, pretend to be buying fish. But standing too straight, staring too hard at people's necks, and replying with, "Not your business," when asked about the price. Well, it drew attention. A local recalled. He looked at the fish like he was asking if it wanted to die. Occasionally, assassins tried inventive disguises. One wrapped himself in hay, pretending to be a straw pile. The target never showed, but the chickens did. Mistaking him for a giant nest, they attacked. The assassin later asked himself why he hadn't just become a fortune teller. The real danger, however, came when the disguise worked too well. One man pretended to be a dying beggar, lying in a gutter for 3 days. So convincing that patrol guards dragged him to a poorhouse. 2 weeks of gruel, hymns, and being called Old Conscience later. He forgot why he came in the first place. Some assassins ditched disguises altogether. They wore plain gray, no expressions, no scent, no presence. Strangely, these were often the most successful, because nobody notices the one who doesn't try to be noticed, the one who doesn't smile, doesn't speak, doesn't exist, in memory. Sadly, assassins don't live in films. There's no sneaky soundtrack, no dramatic lighting. Disguises don't make you invisible. They only buy time. And when you are found out, the only disguise left is pretending to be dead. One assassin survived by lying in a trash heap for 4 hours, faking a rotting corpse. When discovered, the guard just muttered, "Ugh, that stinks. Throw it out." And that's how he lived. This job doesn't require you to be a great actor, just someone who bows their head at the right time, blends in quietly, and when necessary, vanishes. And if all else fails, be ready to explain why the monk has weapons up his sleeve, why the old man outran a dog, and why the haystack has teeth. Or better yet, don't say anything. Because silence is the one disguise no one sees, and everyone fears, and it always fits. Chapter 5. Medieval Stealth, Tripping on Chicken Poop from the year 1142. Historians call it the art of invisibility. Writers call it moving like a shadow. Training manuals call it to travel without trace, without sound, and without alerting any living creature, including dogs, cats, or insomniac elderly women. But medieval assassins called it walking at night without stepping in chicken poop. An assassin without stealth is like a cat jumping on a table and knocking over every dish. Still a cat. Just one nobody wants in the house anymore. Picture this. A foggy night, no moon. The wind gently brushing past rotting wooden fences. You, cloaked in black, tiptoe through the yard, your feet touching the earth, like feathers on still water. You are silence. You are thought, before it forms. You are... squeak. You've just stepped on an old door dumped behind someone's house. It creaks like the lid of a coffin being opened by a dramatic ghost. A dog 15 meters away lifts its head. A grandmother cracks open her window. And you, the 6-month trained professional, get chased off the property by a woman wielding a broom and a sandal. From a cottage, no larger than a soup pot. Medieval stealth came with no technological support. No soft-soled rubber shoes. No soundproof cloaks. Only dirt. Straw, squeaky floorboards, and animals, seemingly born with the sole purpose of ruining your entire profession. Chicken coops were enemy number 1, not because chickens were vicious, but because they refused to sleep on schedule. Some clucked through the night like they were planning a military campaign. Others rammed into you like you'd insulted their ancestors. Chickens, the unwitting allies of rural security forces. Next, dry straw. You'd think straw would be soft. It isn't. Straw has opinions. It crackles and snaps like someone tearing sandpaper underwater. Step wrong once, and the whole backyard becomes a chorus of crisp betrayal. A soundtrack no guard could sleep through. Then there's the half-dead fire pit. Still smoking. Eyes burn. You cough. Everyone hears. One assassin once coughed and woke 3 generations under one roof. Grandparents, parents, and a newborn. He salvaged the mission only by pretending to be a lost salt vendor, and was let in to sleep on the floor. A strange success, but a success nonetheless. Some villages scattered husks or dry twigs across their courtyards to catch thieves. The result? You tiptoe through like a circus stilt walker on a creaky wooden stage. Audience: 4 suspicious pigs, watching from the pen. Speed means nothing in this line of work. What matters is patience. There are nights where you take 5 steps, then stand still for 10 minutes, then sit, then wait for a cat to pass, then rise, only to step into a forgotten wash basin and summon every god in the night with the sound. One old assassin once said, "Move as if everything in this world is trying to betray you." Because, in truth, it is. You're not just avoiding objects beneath your feet. You're avoiding yourself. The growl of your stomach, the rasp of your breath, the swish of fabric on fabric, even the quiet click of your knees if you crouch too quickly. One man blew his cover because his knees made a sound like snapping wishbones. Some recommended smearing pig fat on the joints, but that only made wild dogs follow you, all the way home. Stealth also means no talking, no whispering, no poetry, no congratulating yourself. One young assassin was caught after muttering, "I'm so good at this," right after hopping a fence without tearing his cloak. An old woman overheard him, reported him. End of story. Sometimes, stealth goes too far. One assassin snuck into a target's house so silently, he forgot where he was. Fell asleep under the bed, woke up the next morning, was mistaken for a thief, and beaten with a broomstick. The accusation? This man snored in his dreams, and yet, among all the chaos, slips, and nights of nearly smashing your face into porch beams, there are fleeting moments of true dissolution. When you step, and the world doesn't notice. When you breathe, and the wind breathes with you. When even the cat on the rooftop doesn't know you passed. A brief, beautiful silence. That's when you realize, stealth isn't the absence of sound. It's the absence of awareness. And then, you step on a chicken, and it all starts over. Welcome to the medieval art of invisibility. No body armor, no digital tech, just raw instinct, and the ability to survive intense public embarrassment. Chapter 6. Targets, orders, and the people who absolutely didn't deserve to die, but did anyway. There's an uncomfortable truth few care to admit. In the assassin trade, you don't decide who dies. You don't get to sit at a map like you're playing a strategy game, choosing targets based on moral alignment, or a tidy evil good needs stabbing chart. Most of the time, you're just handed a crumpled scrap of paper with a name, usually someone you've never heard of. Sometimes it's a traitorous noble, sometimes a corrupt priest, but more often, it's just a normal person, a donut seller who said the wrong thing to the wrong person, or sold too many pastries without paying the aroma tax. And so, you get your orders. Deal with him. No reason, no explanation. No one asks whether he owns a cat, or once rescued a drowning child. Just a single note. He wears blue, lives near the village well. Tends to sing in the afternoon. You nod, like you understand, but your head is already a maze of questions. What kind of singing? Royal blue or forest green? What if he changes clothes? And if his neighbors also sing? Do I eliminate the whole block? Once, a young assassin was tasked with killing a man named Bertram, a common name. He found 6 Bertrams in the village. 3 wore blue. 2 liked to sing. 1 just had curly facial hair. After a week of surveillance, he picked the one with the beard, because, in his words, he looked suspicious. Turned out, the intended target was Bertram number 6, who had moved away a month prior. The organization wasn't angry. They just added a note. Avoid beards, unless confirmed. There's a popular myth that assassins only kill bad people. In truth, most victims are simply inconvenient. They might have asked for their debts to be repaid. They might have discovered a tax discrepancy. They might have said, "I don't care for your gingerbread." And then, one fine evening, they hear a faint sound behind them, and then nothing at all. One target was a school teacher. His crime? Teaching children to read too well. A noble's son was embarrassed when caught misquoting poetry. The assassin arrived, found the teacher teaching rhyme to toddlers, and had to wait 2 full days to act, because the man never locked his door. And had a clingy cat. Sometimes, the target is another assassin. Yes, you get assigned to eliminate your own co-worker. One assassin once recounted, "I was ordered to deal with someone. I arrived and found him eating porridge and wiping down a blade. He looked up. We both nodded. Then we both drew weapons. Both missed. Both fell. And then, we started talking. They drank together, talked about back pain, cold nights, and the time a chicken tried to kill them. In the end, they faked their deaths, mailed back 2 hats, stained with duck blood, and disappeared together to sell meat pies. But sometimes, the target is someone familiar. A man once received orders to kill his own father. Another was told to eliminate the person who had nursed him through childhood fever. And one, the saddest of all, was tasked with killing someone he secretly loved. That assassin slipped a love letter into the target's pocket, hoping they'd understand. They didn't. They read it aloud, in the marketplace. He was humiliated, and didn't go through with it. He was dismissed from the guild shortly after. Now he's a tailor, lives quietly, stitching seams, not cutting throats. Assassination orders don't come with bonuses. No one tips you extra for difficult jobs. You're handed a dull blade, a name, and the timeless advice: be quick, be unseen. But sometimes you are seen, by a goat, by a sleepless child, or worst of all, by the target. One was stabbed while mid-performance, playing a tune. The song cut off, a missing note. Silence. No one speaks of that melody anymore, but the assassin remembers. You might think assassins grow numb over time. They don't. Many still sleep poorly. They don't talk about it. They still joke. They still vanish like fog in the forest. But at night, they often stare at their hands. The ones that held the blade. The ones that trembled. And they don't remember the face. They remember the eyes. Eyes that didn't understand. Not afraid. Not angry. Just confused. And that may be the hardest part. In the archive of a certain guild, there's a list. Names of targets who were never killed. Some were spared on purpose. Some because the assassin tripped, got lost, or just forgot what they were doing. Some because the assassin was simply too tired. These people lived, not knowing what they escaped. And they didn't need to. If you ever see an old man with a bent back, laughing eyes, and a shaky hand lifting tea, he might once have been marked for death, but he lived, thanks to a moment of hesitation. Welcome to the world's most discreet humanitarian project. I didn't kill anyone today. Chapter 7. Poison. A delicate art and frequent cause of digestive distress. Killing with a blade? Crude. Strangling someone? Exhausting. But killing with poison? Now that's art. A quiet art. Subtle. Precise. A drop here. A pinch there. No blood, no screams, no messy floors to clean. At least, that's the theory. In practice, medieval poison making was less like chemistry, and more like cooking in the dark with unlabeled ingredients. Except instead of feeding people, you're feeding them to death. Lesson 1 in toxicology. No 2 lessons are ever the same. There were no standard doses, no consistent recipes. No one knew exactly how much a pinch was, or how long to wait after until they turn purple. One mushroom might paralyze, another might cause sneezing for 3 days, and unexpectedly improved health. Another might only induce sleepwalking, leading your target to wake up on the roof, holding a piece of bread, and asking no one in particular, why? Preparing poison wasn't easy. You needed fire hot enough to brew, but not burn off the scent. Tools that weren't rusted. Patience, not to vomit when the fumes hit your nose mid-stir. One assassin spent 4 hours brewing poison from wild clove root. When finished, he tested it by dabbing a bit on his fingertip. He didn't die, but his finger shriveled, like a raisin. From then on, he used his left hand for greetings, and his right for threats. Some poisons had to be mixed into wine, tea, or stew. The only issue? Assassins rarely got dinner invites, and slipping a green onion-scented fluid into an already prepared teacup tends to be noticed. One time, an assassin had to poison toast, but it was raining. The bread got soggy, the poison wouldn't stick. He tried spreading it like butter, but accidentally smeared it on the bottom. The victim ate it, frowned, and said, "Huh, bit burnt today." Then lived another 40 years, dying peacefully, at 87. Storage was a nightmare. No airtight containers, no refrigerators. Poisons were kept in wooden gourds, eggshells, or scraps of cloth. One assassin left his poison in an overturned bowl, forgot it, came back 3 days later to find it had fermented, changed color, and was glowing. Faintly. He used it anyway. The target didn't die, but they talked non-stop for 48 hours. It was documented as a spectacular failure, but fascinating case study. Some poisons absorbed through the skin. Sounds convenient, unless you scratch your nose mid-prep. You'll never know if it worked, because you'll pass out before the victim does. Experienced assassins wore gloves made of animal hide, but they were rough, non-waterproof, and very itchy. One assassin turned out to be allergic to his own gloves. He eventually switched to wrapping leaves around his hands. It looked dramatic, but attracted mosquitoes. Dosing was the hardest part. Too little, the victim gets mild indigestion. Too much, they vomit all over the floor. And you get arrested for public health violations. One assassin overdid it. The target vomited 3 times, fainted once, then woke up claiming to be spiritually cleansed. He went on to become a traveling healer, promoting accidental bowel enlightenment. And yes, there were mistakes. You poison the wine meant for your target. A passing soldier grabs the wrong cup, drinks, collapses. Everyone panics. You, in the corner, realize you just killed a drunk guy. Your real target is sipping beet juice across the room. Sometimes poison wasn't meant to kill, just intimidate. You sprinkle some suspicious-looking powder in a letter. Write, "This will kill you in 3 days." Then, do nothing. The victim panics, confesses everything, resigns, rediscovers spirituality, all thanks to turmeric, mixed with charcoal. Poison is unpredictable, imprecise, messy. It requires patience, silence, and a very high tolerance for trial and error. Stabbing someone? You know they're dead. Poisoning someone? Might take 3 days. Might never happen. Might end with them yelling at you. On day 4. And yet, there's something strangely beautiful about poison. It's soft. No blood. No screams. Just silence. And endings. Or not. So now, as you close your eyes, picture a tiny vial, sealed with beeswax. Inside, a dark brown mixture, smelling faintly of soil, of moss, of endings. You can't quite predict. And remember, if you've never killed anyone with poison, that's okay, because sometimes the deadliest toxins are the things you never say aloud. Chapter 8. Escaping after the kill. An improvised art of humiliation and haste. People often say, once the job is done, it's done. But in truth, it's not done. Because after you assassinate someone, you don't get to just dust off your cloak, whistle a tune, and stroll into the sunset. You have to disappear. Quietly. Quickly. Without a trace. And most importantly, without tripping over a bucket someone left in the middle of the street. Escape is the most underestimated part of assassin training. Mostly because no one lives long enough to write that chapter. Some were chased by dogs. Some were surrounded by angry villagers for trampling someone's onion patch. Some fell into a well trying to hop a fence. Once, an assassin killed his target inside a tavern. It was perfect. One silent stab, no witnesses. He stepped out, exhaled in relief, then tripped over a bucket, doused in fish sauce. The stench was so intense that the guards didn't question him. They just kept a respectful distance of 12 feet. You might consider running. It sounds like a good idea, if you're an athlete. But if you're an assassin who just scaled a wall, held your breath for 30 minutes, and is bleeding from the nose because of the weather, then running is simply the fastest way to fall on your face. A seasoned assassin once said, "Run fast, people notice. Walk slow, people suspect. But walk like you just left the outhouse, no one gives a damn." Some prefer hiding, behind bushes, inside firewood carts, under tables. One even hid in a pastry display. The problem? The shopkeeper noticed the cabinet shaking. The assassin, caught off guard, shouted, "I'm a new dessert!" No one believed him, but no one arrested him either. The shopkeeper was too confused. Sometimes the escape involves disguise. Kill, then change clothes. Throw on a headscarf. Pretend to be a salt delivery man. One tried limping away as a frail old lady, until a real old lady beat him with her cane for identity theft. The ideal escape route should be dog-free, mud-free, nosy neighbor-free. But the actual escape route is usually a narrow alley, a creaky wooden bridge, and a suspiciously placed pile of cow dung, set like a rustic landmine. One assassin once tried walking against the market crowd, pretending to be a merchant. He forgot one detail. His hands were still bloody. A vegetable vendor screamed. A fishmonger brandished a cleaver. He had to choose, jump into the river, or claim he had slaughtered a chicken, a bit too enthusiastically. On rainy nights, things get worse. You can't see the road, your shoes slip, mud swallows your trousers. You try hiding in a horse stable, only to discover the horse doesn't like strangers. A single kick, you fly out, land in an old lady's vegetable basket. She shouts, "You again! The one who trampled my morning glory last week!" You don't remember, but she does, very clearly. Some assassins use distractions. Throw a knife into a water barrel, set a haystack on fire, yell, "Fire!" and vanish into the chaos. One assassin even burned the village's decoy hay barn. It worked, until people noticed he was the only one whose hair wasn't wet. In a panic, he cried, I am the fire god!" No one believed him. But someone did start worshipping him. A few don't run at all. They stay, pretend to be witnesses. One assassin sat calmly in the very tavern where the murder had occurred, and told the guards, "I've been here since morning, saw no one suspicious." They believed him, until he accidentally said the victim's name, unprompted, and then there are those who don't need to escape, because no one noticed, no one cared. Because the world doesn't ask questions when nothing explodes and no one screams. So you see, escaping isn't about being the fastest or the best at hiding. It's about blending in, like a shadow sliding across a wall, like a breeze slipping through a cracked window, like a name no one can quite remember. And if you do it well, people will just say, "I think someone was here," and then forget, right after breakfast. Now, you can close your eyes. Picture yourself leaving the scene. Not rushing, not panicking, not being chased by poultry. Just a shadow, drifting through a night no one will remember. Chapter 9. When everything goes wrong. The aftermath of a missed stab and screams best left unrepeated. In the popular imagination, an assassin is a mystical creature. One strike, gone. No witness, no sound, no trace. That's fiction. In medieval reality, if you miss your stab, drop your dagger, trip over the threshold, wake the dog, tear the target's curtain, and yell, "Oh no!" the entire village knows. And from that moment onward, you're no longer an assassin. You're the leading actor in a tragic play called The Clumsy Killer, performed live for villagers, cats, and a large, angry collection of broomsticks. Failure 1. The blunt blade. You take a deep breath, draw your weapon, step forward, and stab. Clink. The blade bounces off, like you just tried to open a coconut with a plastic spoon. The target turns around with a face that says, "Did you just offer me cake?" You force a smile, then run, trip over a chair. Fall to the ground and ask yourself, why didn't I just make cake? Failure 2. Wrong direction. One assassin entered the right house, found the right bed, and stabbed the wrong person. Because it was dark. Because the blankets were confusing. Because someone had swapped sides the night before. By morning, the whole village knew. The sneaky killer stabbed an innocent wife, while her husband slept like a log. The husband awoke, Noticed his wife wasn't moving. Assumed she was angry. Made tea. Waited. When the guards burst in, he finally muttered, "She has been quiet today." Some assassins injure themselves. One drew his dagger too fast and forgot he was next to a wall. The blade caught his cloak, spun around, and thunk, straight into his own shoulder. Didn't die, but spent 3 days in the infirmary under a chart that read, "Wound, caused by excessive enthusiasm." Another leapt from a rooftop, moonlight behind him, blade in hand. Forgetting. The roof was made of straw. He sank in up to the knees. Couldn't get out. The target spotted him. Screamed. Summoned family members to cut him out with gardening shears. Worse still are the captured alive cases. You don't die. You don't escape. You just get caught. Dragged by the ear into the village square. The crowd forms. A baker yells, "I knew he looked suspicious last night." An old woman points, "He crushed my water spinach last month." A child adds, "I saw him sleeping under the chicken coop." And you, in that moment of glory, manage to say, "It was an accident." Punishment for failed assassins isn't light. Hanging, burning, family-wide curses. Or if you're lucky, manual labor in a monastery, scrubbing floors with a toothbrush, bristle-free, while monks chant non-stop. One assassin was spared execution for one reason only. Frankly, nobody liked the guy you were trying to kill, but your technique was just embarrassing. There's even a strange tradition. Failed assassins get their names carved onto a wooden board at the village gate. Not for honor, for warning. This person once tried to kill someone, and failed in spectacular fashion. Some signs even include a drawing. A man slipping on a banana peel, dagger in hand, shouting, "Oopsie!" But not all failures end in shame. Some escape, flee into the woods, live quietly, grow turnips, chat with squirrels, and every night, tell the stars about their first missed stab. A long story, full of regrets, ending with, "But now I know how to boil eggs." This profession spares no one. The skilled die. The sloppy die. Only the lucky, or so laughably incompetent no one suspects them, survive. One assassin faked madness, wandered town talking to rocks, ate tree bark, called himself the dandelion overlord. No one suspected a thing. They just felt sorry for him. Others confessed. "Yes, I did it." But no one believed them. They looked too gentle, too hungry, too unemployed. So if you plan to become an assassin, remember this. Killing is one thing. Surviving after you mess it up is the real art. And if you're lying in bed preparing to sleep, don't worry. No one's trying to kill you. And if someone is, they're probably tripping over a bucket, dropping their knife, and getting stuck in a rain barrel. Sleep well. Tonight, all the clumsy assassins have gone home, and are currently Googling how to treat a self-inflicted stab wound. Chapter 10. When the one who hired the killing wants to kill the killer too. Usually after completing a contracted kill. A professional medieval assassin does what any self-respecting blade for hire should do. Disappear. No traces. No weapons left behind. No receipts. But some assassins, out of a misguided sense of courtesy, make the mistake of coming back to ask, "It's done. How would you like to settle payment?" And that's when the profession shifts from silent killer to publicly hunted target. The person who hired you to kill. You thought they were your ally. A nobleman with coin. A cleric with influence. A merchant with a grudge. But you forgot something. The kind of person who hires a killer is the kind of person who thinks death is a reasonable solution. And if they were willing to kill someone else, killing you, the only witness left, is just a footnote on their to-do list. Clean up loose ends. There's an old tale of an assassin named Marek. After completing his kill, he returned to the client and handed over a blood-stained handkerchief as proof of completion. The client smiled, nodded, and offered him a pie. It was warm, delicious, apple-filled, and laced with poison. Marek ate half, fell asleep at the table. By morning, he was dead, guarded by cats, not because they mourned him, but because cats of that era adored the smell of poisoned apple. Another assassin was rewarded with a lavish feast. He ate, he drank, he laughed, almost touched by the rare feeling of being treated like a human being. Then a masked servant entered, with a garrote. The assassin understood immediately, not because of instinct, but because it was his favorite model of garrote. He leapt up, flipped the table, threw a roast chicken into the servant's face, jumped through the window, slipped on spilled beans, but lived, and swore, never eat dinner with clients again. In another case, the employer personally walked the assassin to the village gate, shook his hand, said, "Thank you," then signaled to two guards, old friends of his, to draw swords. The assassin shrugged, drew his dagger, stabbed them both, then muttered, "Congrats. Now you'll need to hire someone new to kill me." No one knows how that story ended, but 10 years later, someone saw the same assassin selling bootleg wine from a cart, mumbling, "I only kill with written contracts now." In the assassin world, trust is a luxury. You kill for them, they kill you, to silence the trail. And so begins the food chain. Assassin killed by assassin. That assassin killed by another assassin. That one slips on a wet stair and dies alone. Conclusion? No one wins. Only the wind beneath the door survives. One assassin tried demanding payment up front. He asked for 50% in chickens, 50% in salt. The client agreed. But after the job, the chickens vanished. The salt turned out to be quicklime. The assassin returned to collect. The client said, "I don't know you," and slammed the door. The assassin stood there, waited an hour, left, returned at night, scrawled a note on the door. "You'll remember me, in dreams." The client never slept well again, not out of fear, but because the line was just that haunting. Assassin guilds knew this was common. They had a rule. After the job, travel 3 villages away. Change your name, your trade, and never return. Or more simply, if you don't want to be betrayed, kill the client too. Some chose that route. But then a third party hired a fourth to kill the one who killed the one who... You get it. It's a bottomless donut filled with vengeance. Some assassins refused to take contracts altogether. They worked only for justice, or for the thrill, or simply out of boredom. They didn't take money. They didn't accept thanks. They just vanished after the job, leaving behind a single goose feather and a faint whiff of mint smoke. No one found them. No one hired them. They lived to age 90, gardening, writing poetry, and occasionally mailing anonymous threats to themselves to stay in shape. So if tonight, in the soft lull of sleep, you ever think of becoming an assassin, remember this. The most dangerous person isn't the one you kill. It's the one who smiles afterward. The one who pours you a drink, pats your back, says, "Well done," hands you a cloth sack, and inside is a live snake, still breathing. And if tonight you hear a knock at the door, don't worry, it's not me. It's probably just the wind, or someone who's just finished a job and wants to get paid. But maybe, don't open it too fast. It might be someone holding a warm apple pie, and a smile that's just a bit too friendly. Chapter 11. Brotherhood in the Shadows. When everyone has a knife behind their back, and a cup to poison their friends. If you imagine that medieval assassin guilds were built on bonds of brotherhood, loyalty thicker than blood, unity tighter than a sack of rats in a granary, I regret to inform you, you've been lied to. Because in truth, this is where people learn how to smile with their eyes, while quietly adding your name to a list titled, Possible Future Elimination. In every secret order, there's someone you trust most. The one who practiced fake stabs with you on a straw dummy. The one who hid you in the wine cellar after a botched assassination. The one who split half a moldy biscuit with you, when hunger nearly convinced both of you to eat your belts. And then, one sunny afternoon, you spot them standing at the alley's edge, holding your dagger. Brotherhood in the assassin world is an unusual concept. It exists, but only under one condition. as long as we haven't been ordered to kill each other. Once, two assassins received the same mission, same target. Neither knew. Both staked out the house, both waited. On the chicken coop roof, they locked eyes, nodded, then argued for 30 minutes about who got to stab first. In the end, they stabbed together. The target died twice, once from the blades, once from shock. They were awarded Most Efficient Teamwork of the Year. No plaque. Just a mildly less poisonous soup at dinner. Not all stories end with applause. There was Loras, brilliant with a throwing knife, terrible with his mouth. One night over supper, he mused aloud. "Isn't it great no one's tried to kill me yet?" 3 heads lifted. Chewing stopped. 2 days later, he found an unfamiliar powder in his water flask. Fortunately, Loras had a lifelong habit of forgetting to hydrate. He survived, switched to rainwater caught in roof gutters, lived happily until he fell off a cloak drying rack. In the guild, rumors spread faster than arrows. You whisper, "Kieran hesitated for a second during training." Next day, Kieran discovers his dagger has been replaced with a soup spoon. Another, Ulrich, snored loudly, which was enough to be labeled a traitor, because, as the saying went, only a man who sleeps well is a man who isn't worried about being murdered. Profound. Until you realize the person who said that once stabbed a pillow mid-nightmare. To survive, one must smile just enough. Too much? You're planning something. Too little? You're really planning something. The ideal face? A soft melancholy, like you're recalling a sad story you might have made up. Brotherhood can be touching, in its own paranoid way. If someone gifts you a cloak, inspect it. No pinholes, no sleeping powder, no tiny snake sewn into the hem. You feel moved, until you learn it was washed in poisoned stream water, to test your immune system. It was, technically, a health check. Once, someone threw a farewell party, brought wine, brought cakes, invited everyone. By midnight, 6 had stomach cramps, 3 passed out, 1 spoke in tongues for 3 days. The host disappeared. Since then, all farewells are done via a nod. Cold, distant, safe. Loyalty tests are regular. You might be asked, would you kill your best friend if ordered? Say no, you're suspicious. Say yes, you get more tests. Ask why. You're marked as dangerously thoughtful. Correct answer. I'll obey if you ask, but I hope you don't. Loyal, regretful, politely passive, but say it in a low voice, without tears. Tears are never a good look. Assassins don't have friends. Only people who haven't been told to kill them. Yet. This reality hangs over every moment, even over porridge, even while watching the moon, even during chess. One assassin once stabbed his opponent mid-game, accusing him of winking while moving the queen. Turned out, he had dust in his eye. So if you joined an assassin guild looking for family, you might consider a monastery. There are fewer knives, and if someone stabs you, they usually apologize. And if tonight, you dream of an old friend, sitting beside you by a fire, sharing half a dry biscuit, look at his hand. If his left hand tenses slightly, if his eyes narrow just a bit too much, it may not be your friend. It may be your friend, with orders. Go to sleep, and maybe crack your window open, in case you need to jump, just in case Brotherhood comes knocking, with a dagger, and a delayed apology. Chapter 12. The Myth of the Ethical Assassin. Stories. Written by people who never had to kill anyone. There is a particular kind of legend that humanity has always loved, the chivalrous assassin. The one who only kills the wicked. The one who never stabs from behind. The one who always leaves a silver coin on the victim's chest, like a whisper saying, "This wasn't murder, this was justice." Sounds poetic, sounds noble, and sounds entirely made up. Because if you were a real medieval assassin, you'd know. You rarely know who your target really is. You don't have time to morally assess their life choices. And most importantly, you don't carry spare silver coins. They're reserved for buying porridge on the weekend. The concept of a moral assassin is typically written by people who've never had to assassinate anyone. They are poets, storytellers, pub uncles slurring over cheap ale, swearing they once saw a man in a black cloak save a child from a villain, before vanishing into the mist, like a steamed bun escaping its basket. Heartwarming? Yes. True? Absolutely not. A real assassin, upon seeing a child in danger, will assess. Will helping expose my identity? Can the child testify later? More importantly, is anyone watching? If no one is, they'll walk away, not out of cruelty, but because this profession doesn't award morality points. There's a famous tale of the nameless assassin who only killed corrupt lords, never harmed the innocent, and always left a pure white flower on each corpse. Poetic, right? Until you ask, a pure white flower, in a forest, at night, after stabbing someone with a rusty blade, who's carrying a delicate blossom while evading guards, dogs, and suspicious innkeepers? No one. One real assassin tried it once. After a kill, he placed a wildflower on the target's chest, then ran, then slipped, then broke his arm, then got caught. When asked why the flower, he groaned, "I thought it'd make me memorable." He ended up memorable for the wrong reasons. The guy who missed twice before landing a single hit. The idea of a conscientious killer is also born from, let's say, a lack of field experience. Some imagine the assassin sitting beside the body, eyes misty, whispering to the stars. I do not take pride in this, but it had to be done. Meanwhile, reality looks more like it's raining. The body's heavy. Dogs are barking. And the assassin is desperately trying to clean the blade, without ruining their only cloak. There's no time for reflection when you're trying not to step in a flower pot on someone else's porch. Some believe in assassins with rules. No killing women. No killing children. No killing anyone asleep. The truth? If you're an assassin, you know. Sleeping targets don't scream. People eating have full mouths. Drunk targets may or may not be the right person. Principles don't matter. Orders do. If the client says kill, you kill. Not because you want to, but because if you don't, you might be next. One old assassin once said, "I have no conscience. I have contracts." That line was later embroidered on a t-shirt by a modern novelist. It sold well. The author didn't know the original speaker. After saying the line, chuckled and asked for more bread because murder makes me hungry. Some imagine assassins as deep thinkers, journaling, sketching, reciting poetry. They do write, but not poetry. Just reminders like, don't reuse dull blades. Noisy boots equal bad. Stop killing the fish vendor. Wrong guy. One actually kept a journal. After 3 kills, he wrote, "Feel nothing. Hands hurt. Bread cold. Got home late." So the tales of heroic assassins, killing only when needed, eyes full of melancholy, are bedtime stories, written to comfort the living. Because it feels better to believe, if I'm killed, I probably deserved it. If an assassin comes, he'll see the kindness in my eyes, and spare me. Real assassins don't look into your eyes. They look at the door, the sundial, and whether the guard dog is tied up. And now, as you lie down in the quiet of night, perhaps you'll feel safer believing these legends. That assassins have ethics, that they kill for causes, that they'd never choose you. Kind, soft-spoken you, who feeds stray cats behind the house. And if that helps you sleep, believe it. Because in the dark, truth and fiction often wear the same cloak. Chapter 13. Personal hygiene, hunger, and the threats. No one trains assassins. For in medieval assassin training programs, they taught many things. How to walk without making a sound. How to stab without getting blood on your sleeve. How to pretend to be a shepherd to infiltrate a village without suspicion. Unless you didn't know how to say bah. But there was one thing they never taught. How to survive with your own body odor and a rumbling stomach. Assassins had no benefits, no regular meals, no private baths, no soft face towels embroidered with initials like in romantic spy novels. What you had was a pouch of knives, some bread hard enough to tile a roof, and a body that hadn't been washed in 3 weeks. First problem: smell. The scent of an assassin was a small symphony, starting with fermented sweat, old animal hide, damp earth from rolling through grass to avoid detection, and occasionally the scent of a strange cat that had once napped in your cloak without your knowledge. You didn't smell yourself, because you were used to it, but others did. One assassin once approached a target at a tavern sat beside him. Before he could draw his blade, the target turned and asked, "Do you work with salted fish?" The plan collapsed. The assassin left. And from then on, he tried putting dried flowers in his shoes. A decent solution, until the flowers started blooming from the sweat. Second problem: hunger. A hungry person should not kill. They shake easily, get irritable, and worst of all, their stomach growls. Imagine hiding behind a curtain, waiting for your target to walk by. Everything is perfect. Still air. Dark night. Your heart beats steady. Then, grrrk. Your stomach roars like a small drum in a cathedral. The target stops, looks around. You hold your breath. Your belly doesn't care. It continues, now in a new rhythm. Me. Like calling stray cats. The target walks off. You lie there, sigh, and swear never to skip a meal again, even if it's just stale bread and millet. Another assassin tried eating heavily before a mission. The result? Stomach cramps, sleepiness. And upon arrival, he passed out behind a bush, dreaming of stabbing a roast chicken. When he woke, the mission was done. But not by him. Another assassin had passed by, saw him sleeping, and completed the job, leaving a note. Next time, don't eat 5 eggs. Causes hallucinations. Then there's personal hygiene. Bathing was a luxury, not due to laziness, but because there were no baths. Streams were freezing, and if you bathed near a village, people assumed you were a witch. One assassin tried washing his hair before a mission. Wet hair, went outside, caught a chill. Sniffles, sneezed right as he was about to strike. The knife fell at his feet. The target turned and said, "Do you need a warm blanket, dear?" Another tried cleaning his hands with fireplace ash. Sounded traditional, but ash doesn't kill bacteria. It just made him look like he'd raided a rat's nest. Someone else used crushed mint leaves as underarm balm. It worked, until 3 dogs tracked him. All night, one fall into a pond. He switched to tolerating the stink, and then there were threats that no training manual mentioned. Like losing hair mid-mission, leaving a shiny patch that got you identified, like an itchy collar, forcing you to scratch while stalking a target, or worse, indigestion. Nothing ruins an assassin's reputation like an untimely fart, but it happened. At a festival, amid music, an assassin crept through the crowd, ready to strike. Then, pff! The first to turn was not the target, but a giggling child, and the assassin fled from shame. The art of silent killing sounds noble, but most of the time, you're not fighting enemies. You're fighting your own breath, the stench of your socks, lingering hunger, a falling flake of dandruff during a stakeout, and the grim realization that, if you don't bathe soon, you'll be sniffed out by a goat. So if you plan to be an assassin, don't forget to pack a good knife, a full stomach, and a light scent, and the ability to suppress a sneeze for 6 minutes, or just lie down, pull up the blanket, and be grateful you live where toilets exist, and no one wants to kill you because of your foot odor. Sleep well. Everything is safe, unless you dropped a piece of bread, and a hungry assassin happened to walk by. Chapter 14. Retirement for Assassins. No farewell party, no cake, just a barn corner and a pillow stuffed with hay. Every profession has an ending. The old blacksmith stops swinging the hammer when his hands can no longer feel the weight. The farmer gives up the plow when his spine bends lower than the scythe. The soup vendor stops seasoning when she mistakes salt for soap powder. But what about assassins? How do they retire? The answer is simple. They don't. Or more precisely, no one expects them to live long enough to need retirement. There's no pension plan, no medals of honor. No one claps you on the back and says, "You've stabbed admirably for 30 years. Go fish now." Because if you've survived that long in the business, people will start to wonder, Did you kill the one who hired you? And suddenly, someone wants to kill you. Still, a few do make it out. Not because they're the best, but because they know when to stop, when to drop the dagger, when to fake their own death, when to hide in a village, and live under the name Old Man Who Counts Chickens. A man named Gerwin retired after being bitten by 3 dogs in a single month. He said, "When the dogs recognize your scent before your target does, it's time to change careers." Now he sells toasted bread, slowly, quietly. No one dares criticize the taste, because his eyes still carry that look, the look of someone measuring the distance, from your neck to the back door. Some assassins become advisors. They sit in the shadows, offer quiet counsel, drink watered-down tea, tell stories in a voice as steady as old wooden clogs tapping on wet stone. Don't use hemp rope, it itches. Don't stab people while they wash their face, it splashes. Don't play dead in a cow pen, you'll get trampled. Wisdom. Even if some youngsters call it outdated, retired assassins own no land, no homes, nothing to pass down but a few scars, a false name, and memories soaked in ash, blood, and forgotten fish sauce. They live off old skills, basket weaving, folk medicine, staring down goats until they faint, or writing memoirs, secretly published as fables for the sleepless. Some fade into civilian life. They become fortune tellers, storytellers, the grumpy grandpa who says 1 sentence per season. You may have met them. The old man at the market corner who never asks anything, but knows which vegetable you're about to buy. The fish vendor who always positions himself where he can see all 4 entrances to the village. The stable hand who somehow knows who's hiding a knife in their boot. They're former assassins. No one asks. No one dares. Only cats sit on their shoulders when the wind shifts. Some refuse to retire because they don't know anything else. They've lived in the dark too long to love the light. They've watched others breathe for so long. They don't know what to do when it's just themselves, breathing with no one to kill. One 73-year-old assassin tried to make a comeback because his hands felt itchy. He pulled his back climbing a fence, got mistaken for a pumpkin thief, interrogated. When he gave his real background, the guards just wrote down, "Sleepwalking Senior." And then, there are those who don't really retire. They just stop killing, but they never stop watching. Never stop listening to the footsteps in the night. Never stop feeling present. You'll see them in the crowd, hands shaking but eyes sharp, toothless smile, but ears trained to hear a blade sliding from a sleeve, 10 paces away. They used to be. They don't explain. They don't prove. They just are. So if you ever ask, what does a retired assassin do? The answer is, they live, but never the same again. And if one day you see an old man sitting in the village square, calmly peeling turnips with the precision of someone who once measured every breath, don't ask too much. Don't get too close. Don't offer cake, especially if it has meat in it. Just nod, quietly, and walk on, because he might be the one who once decided, who didn't wake up the next morning. And now, he just wants a peaceful nap. Sleep well. And if you dream of someone washing their hands thoroughly before eating, don't worry. It might just be someone who's killed too many, and now simply wants clean hands for peeling oranges. Chapter 15. Bacon. The scent of power, the taste of arrogance. There is a sleepy truth in the world of assassins that few are willing to admit. It's not gold. It's not daggers. It's not tear-stained letters from the church. It's bacon. Not because it tastes good, but because it's rare. And because it can make a man drop his guard faster than the words, "I won't kill you, just share that bacon with me." In the culinary landscape of the Middle Ages, where turnips were your friend, barley soup your lover, and bread as hard as a nobleman's conscience, bacon stood as the symbol of 2 things. 1. Luxury. 2. Danger. Because if you had bacon, it meant you had a pig, you had salt, and you had the right to smell like someone who wasn't poor. A real assassin knew. You cannot buy a starving man's trust with words, but you can buy his silence with a strip of oak-smoked fat. Many failed assassinations weren't due to the target being too strong, but because the assassin couldn't resist a craving. Bacon is a trap. It softens your heart, and worse, it makes you audible. Picture this. You're sneaking through a window at midnight, every sense strung tighter than a lute string. When it hits you, that smell, savory, rich, slightly charred. Before you remember your mission, you've inhaled deeply and whispered, "Oh heavens." The target hears. Dogs bark, guards arrive, you flee, and the bacon remains, hanging above the fire, like a smirking insult. Once, an assassin named Willem was hired to kill a treacherous lord. He slipped past guards into the bedroom. Everything was perfect, until he saw the unfinished dinner. A plate of bacon, a roasted onion, some fat-soaked bread. He sat down. One bite, he thought, then two, then five, then he fell asleep, in the Lord's chair. By morning, the Lord had ridden off to war. Willem was found and locked in the chicken coop. He later changed careers, grilling meat in the town market. No one believed a real assassin could season pork so well. Bacon is also the scent of power. A man may be poor, hunted, or ragged, but if he walks into a room carrying the smell of bacon, people pause, not from hunger, but respect. They don't know who he is, but clearly, he once held power. He once ate well. He can pay in meat, not promises. Some assassins use bacon as a psychological weapon. Instead of threats, they pull out a fragrant strip and say, "This is the last time you smell this unless you cooperate." Most do. Some beg for one final bite. One even wept, whispering, "It smells like home." Bacon is a declaration that you are not nameless, that you have walked through fire, blood, mustard fields, and survived with a bag of salt, a blade, and the right to demand a hot meal. But bacon also carries arrogance. A bacon-loving assassin may move slower, get sloppy, be betrayed by a single greasy fingerprint. One assassin was identified solely because the smoky scent lingered on his collar. "This smells like wind-dried bacon," they said. "No villager has this." And that was that. If you're thinking, "I'd never fall for bacon," imagine you're starving, freezing, being hunted, and there, before you, a warm bun stuffed with pork, fat dripping onto the floor with a hiss like a sprung trap. Could you resist? Some tried. Others never lived to tell. So if you've ever read about a great assassin, a shadow in the night, a man who never failed, he might have just been someone who knew how to say no to meat. Now close your eyes, take a deep breath. If you smell something savory, it's not bacon, just your imagination. And maybe a memory of one winter night when you almost drew your dagger, but chose the spoon to scrape up the last bit of fat. Sleep well, dream gently, and if you dream of bacon, just make sure you're not holding a knife. Chapter 16. Brewing tea from breath, warming hands with memories, and teacups without tea. Night has fallen, not with a sound, but with the soft withdrawal of light, like someone quietly turning off a stove. You sit there, an assassin with no one left to kill, no one to follow, and nothing to eat but a teacup without tea. In the world of assassins, tea is a concept, a luxury. Something that, when mentioned, makes people sigh, then warm their hands over an empty cup, as if memories could bring heat. Not everyone has tasted real tea, especially not assassins. They live among mud, wind, unidentified organic waste, and conversations cut short by blades. Their version of tea might be boiled water steeped with nameless roadside leaves, spring water reboiled 4 times to kill germs and hope, or simply a long sigh into a cup, then waiting, as though the steam from their lungs might steep a moment of peace. Someone once said, "If you can't brew tea with leaves, then brew it with patience." And assassins are the most patient people, waiting in the dark all night for a single door to creak, waiting for lights to go out, waiting for the wind to shift so their breath gets carried away. so sitting before a steaming cup with nothing to drink is a light challenge. They are used to waiting, for orders, for sleep, for the past to become something no longer needing to be hidden. Even tea without tea can smell nice, if you know how to imagine. Just close your eyes, take a soft inhale, and think. Today smells like Sephora blossoms, and you'll smell them, or socks, but either way, it's yours. A scent no one can steal, no one can trace, and no one will report in a confidential file. There was once an old assassin who lived in the mountains, his name long forgotten. He didn't kill anyone for the last 10 years of his life. He simply sat in his hut, boiled water, and poured invisible tea into cracked cups. Villagers thought he was senile. Children called him the steam brewer. Dogs didn't bark when passing, and cats sat with him. Once, a thief broke in, ransacked the place, and found a chipped clay kettle, 3 unglazed porcelain cups, and a book with no words. The thief left, but that night, he dreamed of being served tea by an old man in black, silent, pouring water from a bottomless teapot. The next morning, the thief fled the village, never seen again. Only the old man's cat meowed. Once, a sound like boiling water. Assassins need time to remember too, but not with images. Images lie. They remember with smells, with flavors, with the feeling of warm cups in cold hands. A teacup without tea can still be a final shelter. Between failed missions, between fake names, between nights when even crickets sound like unpaid debts from the past. Once, in a forest, a young assassin was wounded. Alone. No medicine. No blade. Just a wooden bowl. He boiled water. Dropped in a leaf. Didn't know the name. Just knew. It was clean. Sat there. Sipped slowly. And lived. Later he said, "I don't remember how deep the wound was, but I remember the water, slightly bitter. And I remember sitting for a long time, as if each sip gave me 5 more minutes to exist." They say, assassins have no soul. But if you make tea without a soul, you're just boiling water. And an assassin without a soul wouldn't stop mid-mission to light a fire, set a kettle, and pour water into an old cup before finishing the job. You might not be good at killing. You might not remember every target. You might forget why you even started. But if you can sit down, in a windy night with frayed sleeves and a hollow cup, breathe into it, and imagine it's tea, then you've lived more than most who ever drew a sword. Now, close your eyes, smell the wind, picture a tiny cup set before you. Don't worry if there's no tea in it, because it holds you. The night, an untold story, and a warmth, enough to help you sleep deeply, as if you've never had to kill anyone at all. Chapter 17. A night without fire, a house without walls, and the woods shrinking whispers of cold. There is a kind of cold that doesn't come from weather. It comes from staring into an absence, where the fire used to be. Fire, like an old friend who once brought warmth, has now left. No message, no knock at the door. Only ashes and a night longer than a nobleman's patience. Assassins, creatures of the dark, are not afraid of cold, but they don't like it either. Because cold doesn't just numb your hands, it numbs your thoughts, slows your blade, and makes memories crack like skin in wet shoes. A night without fire is a test of character. You find out how many blankets live inside you, how many breaths you can bear before you start. Talking to moss on a rock wall. People say, when it's too cold, even trees stop telling stories. But that's not true. They just whisper quieter. And assassins, experts in hearing what isn't said, still hear. The cracking bark. The shivering wind curled like a wet cat. And the quiet warning that maybe you shouldn't fall asleep. Sleeping in the cold is an art. You curl like a shrimp, hands crossed over chest, comforting yourself with your own heartbeat. And if you're lucky, a small weasel may come, lie beside you, and use you as a pillow. Some nights, assassins lie in houses with no walls, not because they're poor, but because the last encounter burned their home, or because they're lodging in the forest inn, where branches serve as beams and dew as blankets. They don't complain. They just lie there, back against earth as cold as truth. Eyes up to the sky, the only ceiling without tacks. Sometimes they shelter in abandoned houses, places that were once a barber shop, a ladder store, or a shrine to a dead cat. Now, only cracked walls, the scent of wet wood and a forgotten blanket, still marked by rat teeth. They sit inside. No dreams, no complaints, just hoping tomorrow brings sunlight, or something warm enough to trick the body into thinking, I'm still alive. There was once an assassin named Lenric, known not for how many he killed, but for how many nights he survived without fire. They say he once used a memory-warmed stone to stay alive, a rock heated by his heart. Or maybe, just his imagination. He once said, I don't need fire, only a story long enough to outlast the night. His favorite began with, once there was a man who searched for fire, and never found it, but found himself instead in the scar of his final attempt. Assassins are never taught how to withstand cold. They just know. Just as they know cold rusts blades, but also softens truths. Many confessions are whispered in mist, not out of guilt. But because cold doesn't let you hold on to anything too long, not even secrets, you might not understand that feeling of curling like a forgotten poem. No touch, no vision, only breath, and the silent question, am I still me if no one remembers me tomorrow? Cold sometimes is an opportunity to sit still, to kill no one, to not be killed, just to exist quietly, like an ember that never caught, like a good night that was never said aloud. You might laugh, but in a night without fire, even the smallest things become sacred. Your own breath, a dry corner of your shirt, a mouse passing by without nibbling you. That is victory. Silent, no applause, but enough to know you're still human, not just a shadow. And if you, tonight, are lying in a bed with a blanket, a pillow, a phone, take a moment to imagine. You're lying in a forest, in a house with no walls, with wind curling through your fingers, and memory the only warmth you have. Inhale. Exhale. Listen to the cold folding itself in your lungs. It's okay. You're not an assassin. You're not in a forest. You're just hearing a sleepy story. And if you listen long enough, you'll feel a little warmer. Sleep. And if you dream of a night without fire, imagine someone sitting beside you, saying nothing, just sharing a breath and keeping the silence warm until morning. Chapter 18. Stepping outside and pretending everything's fine. There's a skill every medieval assassin learns early. Not how to hide a dagger, not how to scale a wall without a sound, but how to pretend to be normal. It's an art, a ritual, a high-level performance, worthy of an honorary degree from the Society of People Who Smile While Burning Inside. That morning you buried a friend. By afternoon you assassinated a salt merchant. By night, you boiled water with wood from the house you once called home. And the next morning, you step outside as if you slept well, as if you saw nothing, as if you don't remember who you are anymore. Pretending to be fine is an invisible cloak, capable of hiding wounds that don't bleed. Every step is a gentle lie, whispered to the world. Don't ask me. I'm too busy to be honest. A good assassin is one who knows when to smile. Not too brightly, lest it looks like you've just killed someone. Not too stiffly, lest it looks like you're about to. Just enough. Smile like you're thinking about a loaf of bread. Poisonless, pastless, just bread, ideal and unbloodied. There was once an assassin named Auric. He was described as a man who always looked like he'd just washed his hands without soap. He once assassinated a noble, then showed up the next morning at the village festival in a straw hat, honey on his face, and won the jump rope contest. When asked how he fit in so easily, he simply replied, I don't kill people, I kill sorrow. You can learn to pretend through small things. Wearing a hat even when there's no sun. Nodding when someone tells a story, even if you didn't hear a word. Holding a cup with both hands, as if it's the only thing keeping you from falling apart. And most importantly, always walk slowly. The guilty rush, the patient ones, they're the ones no one wants to bother. The medieval world was an open stage, no curtains, no props, only you, and the ability to pretend nothing is wrong. Even if your coat still smells like smoke, even if your shoes still hold the blood, even if your hands tremble like a chewed-up wooden spoon. Sometimes you don't pretend for others. You do it for yourself. There are days when you stand before a puddle mirror. The face staring back is someone unfamiliar, and you say, "I'm fine," not because you believe it, but because it's the least harmful sentence to start a day with. Assassins don't cry in public, not out of pride, but because crying clouds your vision, and blurred eyes can't see the exit. So instead, they choose to yawn loudly to cover a sigh, rub their eyes like sand got in, even when there's no wind, and sometimes slip a hand into a pocket to touch a cold stone, just to remember they can still feel. Pretending to be fine is a form of survival. A way to move through crowds without a name being called. A way to keep oneself without having to explain. Because sometimes honesty is a luxury. Not everyone is safe enough to afford it. Someone once asked, "Isn't it exhausting to pretend all the time?" The answer is yes. But exhaustion is better than exposure. Better than explanation. Better than looking into someone's eyes and knowing they see through you. You may not be an assassin, but if you've ever stepped outside after a sleepless night and said good morning with a smile that didn't match your soul, then you understand. Understand how to keep going, how to exist, without needing anyone to acknowledge your sadness. And if tonight you're lying in bed, eyes open, heart beating, but still whispering, "I'm okay," then you are not alone. There's a whole generation wearing masks stitched from steady glances, walking with you step by step, through a world quietly splitting at the seams. Go to sleep. No need to pretend anymore. Here, you don't have to smile at the right time. You don't have to remember your name. Just be still. Breathe. And let your mind drift, like fading ink on a farewell letter you never sent. Chapter 19. Things you thought were lost, but were just pretending to be gone. There's a truth as cold as it is soft, like the imprint of an old blanket on your cheek after falling asleep on a rainy afternoon. Many things are not lost. They're just hiding out of sight, like a cat that once loved you, now curled up in the firewood basket, pretending to be shadow. Assassins are masters of losing. Losing their real names, losing people they once loved. Losing the ability to explain why they dislike sweet pastries. But a strange thing happens on gray mornings. Something returns. An old scarf. A tiny brooch you thought fell into a well. Or a thought you were sure would never come back. Not because you found it, but because it let you see it. Maybe not all memories float away. Some simply fold themselves up, neatly tucked between your heart and lungs, a place few ever clean. Assassins understand this. They don't forget. They store. There was once an assassin named Marion, who dropped a bronze bracelet while fleeing through an old cemetery. It had belonged to his sister, a sister who no longer remembered his face. Marion didn't go back for it. He just packed the memory deep in his satchel, next to his third knife and a slab of slightly spoiled salted meat. Years later, after accidentally killing the wrong merchant, Marion hid in an abandoned house. On the wooden table, amid dust and cobwebs, sat a bronze bracelet, rusted but heartbreakingly familiar. He didn't ask how, just exhaled and slipped it into his pocket as if he had never lost it. You might think you've lost courage, calm, or your favorite pair of striped socks. But the truth is, they're sitting in a far-off corner of your life, legs crossed, sipping tea, whispering to each other, "We'll come back when the moment's right." Some pieces don't disappear. They just turn their faces away. Like standing before a tilted mirror. You see nothing. But tilt your head just slightly, and everything reappears as if it never left. Assassins call it the shadow of memory. No one sees it, unless they truly want to. You still remember someone's laugh, but not their face. You still hold a phrase in your head, but can't be sure. Who said it? Those things didn't vanish. They're still inside you. Just, they don't want to be touched until you're ready. Assassins live by instinct, not logic. They sense when a blade is misplaced, when a stare lasts zero point 0.2 seconds too long, and when a dream repeats, not from memory but because something inside is knocking. Once, while eating watery porridge by an old hearth, an elderly assassin named Talus murmured, "This spoon feels familiar." A cracked wooden spoon, indistinguishable from thousands of others. But his hand trembled, as if memory returned. Not in image, but in touch. It was his mother's spoon, used to ladle turnip stew on days with little meat but lots of laughter. Talus didn't cry. He just stirred once more and ate a little slower. You too. Maybe you've lost something. Trust, friendship. A part of yourself that was clumsy but true. But somewhere, in an old drawer, in an old song, in a fleeting dream, it's still there. Not whole, but enough to remind you who you were, and that you still are. You don't have to dig through everything to reclaim it. Just be still long enough. Feel deeply enough. Sleep slowly enough. And you'll hear a quiet voice. I never left. I was just waiting for you to look. Tonight, before sleep, if there's something you believe you've lost, whisper its name. No need for anyone to hear. No need for anyone to understand. Just so, you know, you're still gentle enough to name what you thought you'd forgotten. Because in the end, what is worth remembering will return. Not in the way you want, but in the way you need. Now sleep. And if a dream comes, full of faded puzzle pieces, laughter with no source, and dim lights leaking through cracked walls, know this, nothing is truly lost. They're just pretending not to be there, until you're ready to say, I remember. Chapter 20. The Cold Forge, the Scattered Ash, and What Remains After All. There's a strange kind of stillness when the forge goes cold. Not because there's no more firewood, not because someone forgot to stoke the flames, but because everything has ended. No noise, no smoke, just nothing left to forge. Assassins. Some of them were once blacksmiths, or at least they knew how to hold a hammer, and they understood that some things cannot be reshaped, no matter how hot, no matter how many strikes, no matter how much you apologize with soot-covered hands. A forge cools slowly. First, the light dims. Then the warmth slips out of the air like an unseen goodbye. Finally, the ash begins to drift. Quietly, freely, as if everything that was once solid has turned into storytelling dust. Ash tells stories by clinging to your sleeves, by nesting in your hair, by settling at the corners of your eyes. Ash from iron, ash from wood. Ash from a past you didn't realize had taken shape. There was an assassin named Darren who forged his own blades. He never bought weapons. He heated, struck, and sharpened the steel himself. Not out of frugality, but because he needed to believe that if he could forge death, he could at least choose how it happened. And every time he killed, he saved a pinch of ash from that day's forge. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder. Anything that once burned once had form. And anything that had form once had purpose. But not everyone keeps the ash. Many sweep it away, scrub it clean, pretend the fire was never there, and then they wonder why, when night falls, they feel something missing. Like a right hand that's holding nothing. Some things shouldn't be swept away, not because they're beautiful, but because they're real. Because they remind you, this is where you stood. This is where the fire once lived. And this is where you learned how to breathe with no one beside you. Ash is not heavy, but choosing to carry it is a decision. Assassins often keep a small pinch, in a box, in a coat pocket, in memory, a place with no luggage checks. You may walk through life with 1,000 wounds, but just one handful of ash can remind you why you began. Ash from a morning when your mother lit the fire early. Ash from a night of blood beneath falling snow. Ash from a half-burned friendship that never got a name. In the end, perhaps what remains is not the sword, not the glory, not the coin, but the ash, and the ones who know how to look into it, and still see the fire. If you ever lose the flame inside, don't rush to relight it. Look at the ash, listen to its story, understand. Not everything that dies is useless. Sometimes, ash is where memory hides the longest. Once, an old assassin sat by the ashes, saying nothing for 3 days. On the 4th day, he pulled out a shard of steel, placed it into a child's hand, and said, "Strike. It doesn't have to become anything. Just hear the sound. Know you're still in there." So can you. Even if you are not an assassin, even if you've never forged a single blade, you once had fire. You once had ash. There was a moment, long ago, when you knew you were changing shape for something that mattered. And even now, when everything feels cold and the ash scatters to the wind, know this: you are not empty. You are just waiting for a new fire. Sleep now. Sleep is a kind of forge, too, where your mind melts down and is struck anew, in a different shape. And when you wake, maybe, you'll be something lighter, stronger, and better at holding ash like an unspoken promise. And now, with the final blade tucked away, the sweat-drenched cloak drying under the late moon, with no one left to kill, and no one left to run from, let your mind slowly let go, as gently as a hop down from a low wall, unseen, and with nothing left worth looking at. You've lived a full assassin's life, a sleepy, bruised, password-forgetting kind of life, sometimes bitten by mice while hiding in haylofts. And you've made it to the end. Not with daggers, but with patience, and maybe a bit of ridiculous curiosity. If you're still awake, congratulations. You're tougher than most medieval assassins, who usually passed out after their second dinner, from hunger, from cold, or from a surprise spear in the back. But if your eyes are already drifting closed, just let yourself float, over straw rooftops, over oaths that sounded epic but no one remembers, and over whispers that were never answered. If you enjoyed this journey, leave us a message, or just a little dagger emoji, so we'll know you're still alive, and not assassinated halfway through the video. Subscribe to Sleepless Historian Pod if you'd like to be lulled to sleep by the next boring historical tragedy, and turn on the bell, just in case you want to be woken up by footsteps at 3 a.m. Now, take a deep breath, let everything fall, and let me whisper, slowly, gently, like wind sliding across the edge of a cold blade. Sleep now, the assassin is tired.